welcome to the Working on Wellbeing podcast by the World Wellbeing Movement. Now, our regular listeners will know that this is the podcast that allows you to be a fly on the wall during conversations with the world's leading wellbeing experts. I'm your host, Sarah Cunningham, and if you are a regular listener, I'd love to ask you to either follow or subscribe and maybe even write a review, because it really does make a difference. In today's episode, we're going to explore the power of community, inclusion and movement in shaping population well-being. But before I introduce today's guests, I'd first like to take a moment to thank our series sponsor, S&P Global. The world's leading organisations rely on S&P Global for the essential intelligence they need to make confident decisions. S&P Global, powering global markets. Now, I am thrilled to welcome two influential leaders who are driving positive change through corporate philanthropy, community engagement, and grassroots initiatives. So first of all, we have a former professional athlete turned wellness strategist and athlete mental health coach and content creator. Kayla Jeter is an influential advocate in physical and mental health and crucially in encouraging diversity and inclusion in sports. She is the founder of the global movement health initiative, 100 Miles of Summer, and she is also the Lululemon brand ambassador. Kayla, you are so welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah. Super excited to be here.
Oh, delighted to welcome you and excited to hear more about 100 Miles of Summer. But joining you, we have Anne Wintroub, who is the head of social impact and engagement at Lululemon. Anne's work in corporate philanthropy aims to expand access to wellbeing resources, particularly for those who face systemic barriers. And the focus here is on driving real change through community initiatives and global partnerships. Anne, you are so welcome.
Thank you, Sarah. It's such an honor to be able to chat with you.
Oh, wonderful. Well, listen, I always like to start by getting to know our guests. And so, Kayla, I'll start with you because you've had such a fascinating journey. Obviously, starting out as a professional athlete before pivoting to become all of the things I mentioned before, wellness strategist, content creator. I mean, you've got a really impressive following on Strava and TikTok and Instagram. But what I really want to know is, was there a defining moment, maybe in your childhood or teenage years, that led you to this career path?
Yeah, I have to say, I think there isn't one exact moment. I really think it's a culmination of many moments. I grew up in a very active household. My dad played professional football. My mom was very active. So as far as movement is involved, it's always been a big part of my upbringing. And also we were encouraged to get outside of the house. So as far as movement goes, it's always been a big part of my life. But when I think, what does wellness look like for me in my everyday life? It really was when I got older. Both of my parents had passed away, my dad from a heart attack, my mom from breast cancer. And in their early passing, that's when I really took some time to focus on what do I need to take care of me to then take care of my community.
I mean, you shared something really profound there. Is there any advice that you would share to anybody listening who maybe is going through the type of grief that you experienced at probably far too young an age?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is very much just like running, take it one step at a time, left foot, right foot, breathe is a mantra I use during races, during training, and everyday life. And as far as career path goes, just listen to what feels good, pay attention to what attracts you. I think above all else is definitely invest in relationships and people and connecting and really getting to know people who believe in you, and giving back is huge.
Thank you so much, Kayla. And Anne, your career path has been quite different, but equally as impressive. So you've had a career path that has spanned both the public sector and the private sector, and you've done so much. But I wonder, was there a pivotal moment that led you to where you are now, working in corporate philanthropy, particularly with a focus on well-being initiatives?
Yeah, no, I love that question. And Kayla, I'm so struck by what you shared and what you concluded is like I mean, you said it far better than I could, but it's exactly what I would say with regard to my own motivation. So thank you for answering that for the both of us. But what I would say to that, Sarah, I've been so lucky to have the career that I have. Certainly skill is a huge part of it, but being able to say yes and being in the right place in the right time in to do what I do has been just a tremendous asset for me. I had no idea that a career in corporate social responsibility existed. When I started off in the workforce, frankly, it really didn't. So with regard to pivotal moments, what I do reflect on often and what I share, what I share with younger folks interested in getting into the corporate social responsibility space. I had been with AT&T for about 10 years when I made the decision that it was time to work differently. I loved my job, but I knew as a person I needed to set things up in a way where I would be embracing new challenges on a day-to-day basis. So I started my own business at that point, and then I was so fortunate to connect with Lululemon, and that really got me to the chapter I'm at now. But I would just say that there sometimes the right time to take a risk is when everything seems like it's working, and it might in fact be working. And should you have the ability to step into something new, then I certainly found for me that was really the dynamic moment in my professional life to step into something new.
But quite courageous, though, Anne, to go out on your own and set up your own business. If anybody is listening and thinking about doing that, what advice would you have for them?
Yeah. So what I would say is it's make a checklist and break down the pieces of going on whatever the change is. Break those pieces down, into tangible bites, if you will, because the bite-sized adventures are far less overwhelming, than the huge leaps can be, and ultimately they get you to the same outcome. So, I would just share, make things really tangible for you. A good old-fashioned checklist can really work wonders.
Good old fashioned checklist, which is a little bit like the one step at a time. So a little bit of similar advice there. And you obviously lead the Lululemon Centre for Social Impact. And I know that the centre emphasises 3 core dimensions of wellbeing. So physical wellbeing, mental wellbeing and social wellbeing. Can you elaborate a little bit on how you leverage those dimensions of wellbeing in the initiatives you run for social impact?
When we support organizations in the physical, mental, and social well-being space, which is what we do, we're in relationship with 125 incredible organizations all across the globe. We just really recognize that all of these dimensions ultimately contribute to one's well-being and frankly to the well-being of community as well. Now it's 2025. So in the 4 to 5 years since we set up the Center for Social Impact, I think as a society, we understand so much more about the global crisis in well-being. And that crisis, how it spans, and the crisis in loneliness. So we've really been able to mature this work to respond to issues that we're gaining a deeper and deeper understanding of daily, ultimately, to truly meet the needs of communities where they're at. So that intersectionality has really wound up also, helping us to step into these key global issues and really be a partner to organizations making tremendous strides against these issues.
And so interesting, but I'd love you to bring it to life for us. Can you tell us how it works in action by maybe giving us a real life example of an initiative that you've run?
Certainly. I think to that, Sarah, it's probably most helpful to just share the how of the work that we do. I mentioned the number of partners that we have, and that doesn't even begin to tell the story. But the way in which we organize our work at Lululemon, which is really, really unique in the space of corporate responsibility and social impact, is we have had a significant dedication to community-based organizations for much longer than the Center for Social Impact has existed. So going back almost 10 years, we have a community well-being granting program that currently supports 100 grassroots organizations. So we define at as not charitable organizations with operating budgets of less than 3 million USD. And these are organizations, all across the globe that are really responding to the distinct well-being needs of their communities in ways that, frankly, grassroots leaders know best. And then we also work with about 25 organizations like World Wellbeing Movement who are really operating at scale, across significant geographies, often, across many continents. So we're really seeking to get after change, both at that grassroots and at that global level. And that is very hard. And frankly, that is not anything that I would counsel, a leader starting up a social impact program to step into. We're able to do that because of the shape of Lululemon, because, as Kayla, I know can speak to far better than I can from her experience. Our stores within each of our communities, our 700 plus stores across the globe, are connected in really deep ways, to incredible wellness practitioners and athletes like Kayla. We've always had a real community approach to the work. So our social impact work really mirrors that approach. And then, the work that we're doing with organizations that are operating globally, of course, I'll speak for myself. I really see as a responsibility of an organization with the growth that Lululemon has had.
Thank you so much. Well, listen, one of the things I really want to talk about today is the power of, we talked about grassroots initiatives, we talked about community, and obviously, Kayla, you are a former athlete, and movement. Really want to talk about the power of movement. And I know this is something you're passionate about because, in a way, since graduating as a former professional athlete, as it were, you've really shaped your career by encouraging more movement within communities, and particularly diversity and inclusion within that. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you're so passionate about the power of movement to shape our mental health and our emotional well-being?
Yeah, I think when it comes to movement, there's so many ways to approach it, and so many also ways that people tend to silo it, whether that's through you're going through an outcome goal, or maybe you're looking for a community, or maybe you just need a moment to take a beat to check in with your body. And for me, that's what movement is. Running specifically, people talk about it as a moving meditation. I can't say I've had the most meditative experiences while running, but I can say that it's been an open conversation that I'm able to tune in, drop in, and see what I most need. That's a question that I ask myself mostly through at the end of the workout, or maybe even during the workout itself, is what do I need to feel most taken care of today? And more often than not, for me, it is moving my body. And if it's not, maybe it's checking in with a friend, or maybe nourishing myself a little bit more. And so movement for me, when I even think about my community and who I speak to, it really brings up these conversations of well, then what does access look like? And not only, money, time, space, environment, safe environment, and how can I provide those experiences and those opportunities for people to engage in movements in a way that are most accessible to them, but also most enjoyable to them, right? I think movement has so many types within that word. We see the running, we see the lifting, we see all these more, I think, performance or a high intensity options, but a good walk, a dance, I do calf raises while I'm brushing my teeth, wherever you can get it in, I think is what's most important. Because yes, we know the physiology behind endorphins being released, stress release that happens for us that we need in our everyday life. Chronic stress is a huge concern and issue within minority communities who I speak to. So how can I just find these micro wellness moments or these gaps throughout one's day just to shake it off a little bit? And even doing that shimmy for me right now, it's I feel a little bit more settled in. I also feel, let's all shimmy together, shake the shoulders. And it kind of just lets you relax into whatever moment that you're in to take it for yourself. And it's knowing that although, yes, maybe you're not able to get to a gym, or maybe you don't have direct access to a community in your neighborhood, but you do have those moments within yourself to move your body, to really feel alive and open this conversation to answer what you most need to feel taken care of.
This is fascinating because I think as well, so many people can actually become overwhelmed, and maybe a lot of people go from zero to too much too quickly. So if we have any listeners who are thinking, oh my goodness, I really need to improve my fitness regime and get out and move more, and maybe if they haven't had a chance to engage in a huge amount of physical activity, I mean, I'm assuming you're not going to tell them to start running, but where should somebody in that situation start?
I'm so glad you asked this question, Sarah, because I'm like lighting up with all the ways to tell people, please don't go from 0 to 100, just because I think about when it comes to movement as an activity and just something within your body, it's meant to be done for a lifetime. It is throughout your life. There is no finish line. It's just the start line, whether it's day one or the day one you're going to decide to take for you in that first step. Take your time. I would advise people to find what movement most excites you, not what's trendy, but what actually excites you. And then find those entry level, those beginner modalities, whether it's a class, whether it's online, maybe there's a personality or someone on social media that you're really interested in. There's so many entry points. And from there, you can find your community. No, movement is meant to carry from you from point A to point B throughout your life. It also will change. I'm 100% sure there's a soundbite of me right now on the internet that says I would never run a marathon. I have run several marathons since, but I did it in my own time. I took the necessary steps for me to figure out what running means to me. Do I enjoy it? Are there certain distances I want to accomplish? And then going from there and just knowing that it can change whenever you want it, but movement for a lifetime is a goal, and make sure you're positioning yourself for progress and success for that to be so.
Yeah, and this so resonates. I mean, when we look at the literature into habit formation, it does tell us to make small incremental builds every day. So yes, the fact that you did say that and then ended up running a marathon, I think is good news for all of us. And when we think about movement, we think probably about the personal benefits, but you approach this actually thinking about movement as a change maker, an opportunity for societal transformation and societal good. Can you tell me more about that and maybe your philosophy and Lululemon's philosophy here?
Yeah, absolutely. But I do just want to start with seconding what Kayla was saying, because Kayla, I think it's so important and not recognized enough how much movement changes throughout a lifetime, right? And I think we can tend to think of ourselves, whether we consider ourselves somebody at younger ages, somebody who moves or not, you can tend to think of yourself as, I am a yogi, I am a dancer. And I'll speak personally now. Kayla, you've inspired me as a runner. And I too was somebody who did not enjoy running just a few years ago. And now it is, one of, if not the way that, I manage my own well-being and self-care. And it is quite meditative for me. And just as you said, I would have never predicted that. So just like, yes to flexibility in how we move our bodies and how our bodies change over a lifetime and our interests change. But Sarah, to your question, we see, I think Kayla's spoken so beautifully to just the individual transformative powers of movement, as well as like the collective powers of movement. And we're just understanding more and more these connections between movement and community. And that essentially is what Lululemon is all about. I mean, as a brand, and certainly what drives the work that, that I have the privilege of leading for Lululemon. We do an annual global well-being report at Lululemon. And in our report of last year, what we found that those who move with others report 26% improved well-being. I mean, there's something significant happening there. In addition to the connections you're making with people when you move your body, when you sweat together, which is an individual experience, there is collective growth, there is collective change that is happening there. And I'll just speak as well from my personal POV. I'm also really interested in, Kayla, I think you probably have so much to share here in the connections between moving your body and moving your mind. And I mean that with regard to mental health, but also with regard to reading and to learning, and to whether deep movement can also unlock the experience of deep learning in a time where attention is becoming more and more challenging for people of all ages. It does seem like there's some real connections there that we're just starting to understand.
Yeah. And Kayla, I don't know, do you want to respond to the movement to help with deep learning question?
No, I absolutely would. I think for me, when I move my body, it really does create space, I think, to think critically, one, in the moment, how I'm moving, to pay attention, but also I think to help process anything that may be bogging down my brain in that exact moment. I can work through it, I can flush it out, and I'm able just to create more space to invite more in, and not in a way that's overloading, but perhaps be able to process better because I'm not having to manage the surface level conversations that are happening in my head. I'm someone who listens to podcasts when I run. I don't listen to music. So it's quite literally deep learning. And I'm like a human physiology person and moving in the same moment. And I found I'm able to retain more just because I have to be fully present when I'm moving.
Yeah, it's
amazing.
So interesting. And thank you for raising that, Anne, as well. A couple of things. One, I've said this before, but I can think of very specific moments, but it's happened on many occasions where I might be, working on something. It could be maybe copywriting or something that requires, creativity or innovation. And then I go for a walk and the idea comes to me. And I can think of times when on my walk, I've literally had my voice recorder on my phone, recording notes as they come into me, because my synapses are just snapping in a way that they weren't snapping when I was sitting at my desk. So there's definitely a very, very clear link. And I think, Anne, the point you made about community, it's so interesting. And we had Professor Robert Waldinger on a previous episode, and he's studied the Harvard study, Harvard adult study, where they've looked at 85 years worth of data, and they've found that the single biggest factor linked to people's happiness and well-being is actually their community and connections. And so what I love about this conversation is we're now bringing together community and movement, which we know are so important. And I think that brings us nicely, Kayla, to your 100 miles of summer challenge. Now, my understanding is that it does exactly what it says on the tin. So you're encouraging people is it run 100 miles? Can you walk 100 miles over the summer? Tell us more about it. And I'd love to know what inspired you to found this.
Sure. So 100 Miles of Summer is a summer movement challenge from May 1st to August 31st, encouraging people to walk, run, roll, jog, stroll 100 miles. Essentially, get outside, move your body, connect with communities around you. And it started, which is crazy to even think about, 8 years ago when I moved to Chicago. I didn't know the city very well. I didn't have a car, so I was exploring the city by foot, coming off of playing professionally, coaching collegiately, getting into this space of like, let me just see what Chicago is about. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. And so, of course, being, whether it's a former athlete in professional lane or even recreational, when I first started running, I thought I had to sprint everything. I was ripping 5Ks at lunch, which is insane. I worked in the corporate setting during that time. Of course, coming back to my desk, totally just toasted, just exhausted from my run. But throughout the years, the challenge, I think, really evolved into something so much more than who gets to the finish line first. Because if I'm being honest, when you complete your 100 miles, whether you're the first person to finish it or the 260th thousandth person, which we had a couple of years ago, there's no medal. It really just is an accomplishment of yourself. And so, as the challenge evolved, throughout the years, throughout my own grief, my mom was passing away, the community showed up for me and, asked me to still put on the challenge. It was something I didn't know if I'd be able to do just because I had so much emotion that I had to manage and my mom, and now everyone showed up for me. Excuse me. It was really beautiful. It was unexpected, especially because this was in 2019. So in 2020, when the global pandemic hit, I was able to show up for everyone else during a time that they hadn't been isolated. And I had gone through that with my mom previously. And the challenge just became, a space for people to really not only find themselves, but find community with others, even when they feel alone. So it's grown to be so much more than, checking the box of walking, jogging, running, or rolling 100 miles. You're part of a global family that really is cheering you on. And every summer, I really look forward to it.
Kayla, I just want to take a moment to just thank you. Thank you for your incredible authenticity. Thank you for creating this challenge, because the emotion that you're so courageously sharing with us here is an emotion that's going to resonate with so many people, listeners and viewers. And I really hope that this will increase the power. So anybody listening or watching who's going through anything difficult at the moment, just as you have been through, Kayla, this sounds like something really, really positive that we can all do. And as you say, it's not about running fast or being the first to achieve the 100 miles. I'm not a runner. I did do some running in my younger days, but I just adore walking, and I will certainly walk 100 miles this summer. How can we update each other on the progress? There's a social element to this, Kayla, is that right?
Yes, absolutely. So you can go to 100milesofsummer.com to join. We are on Instagram as well. We'll have a couple meetups throughout the US and some international. I think what's been really beautiful over the years is how individuals who've been part of it from the first year into their 6th, 7th, 8th year, are wanting to now host meetups in their own city. They're gathering their own people. Some of them are walking only groups. Some of them are jogging groups. Some people connect with each other to join races. And you don't have to be part of, it's not a run club. And I say that because I think when people think run club, it has so many connotations around it that you have to show up at a certain pace, that you have to wear a certain gear. No, it could be the tagline that we use is by any miles necessary. So your miles count on your commute to work. Yeah. Your miles count when you're walking with your children or your fur babies, if you will. It's meant to just be movement that's part of your life, but encourage you to get outside and connect with other people. So we connect digitally, but also in person.
And this is global, Kayla, is that right?
Yeah, it's global. Anyone can join from anywhere. We have walkers, joggers, runners, and rollers that are in the UK, in LA, down in South Africa. I think that's the beautiful side of the internet, if you will, which can be hard to find, I think, at times, is that it's a great connector. So everyone's sharing their sights and sounds on social media. We have a Strava group as well.
Wow. So perhaps another call out to our listeners and viewers that if this is not something that's currently being done in your local town or village or city, maybe you could send something out on your WhatsApp group or your own social media to encourage. And I'm going to take that call to action as well in my town. And I love going for walks with my neighbours. So I'm going to promote this a little bit, and let's do it together over the summer.
That would be great. Better together always.
Better together always. Anne, have you, tell me a little bit about 100 Miles of Summer yourself. Is it something that you've completed yourself? And is this something that Lululemon have been involved with?
I mean, I haven't done it. I'm totally going to do it. Kayla, you're just such an incredible leader and mover, and I appreciate you so much, always. I will do it. I'm committing. I'll get a San Francisco chapter together if there isn't already one. I think I was intimidated by the 100 miles, frankly, and that's just my thing, right? But I'm fully ready now. Anybody should be ready. Don't waste time being intimidated as I was. I'm really eager to participate in this with you, Kayla. And as far as Lululemon goes and our participation, Kayla, I want to just turn that over to you. You're the one with direct experience of that. So please do share.
Absolutely. Really quickly though, Anne, my sister lives in San Francisco and she walks it every year. I have 3 sisters. Yeah. She wins out of our sisters every year and she walks it. She takes all walking meetings. So
I love this.
Listen.
Yes, you dear friend. Yeah. Sister Jeter.
Yeah. So Lululemon has been an incredible partner, not only for me as an ambassador throughout my journey over the years, but with 100 Miles of Summer, I think the tenets of Sweat, Grow, Connect definitely reflect what 100 Miles of Summer is all about. That there's no look to the runner. There's no pace to the runner. Walking is definitely encouraged. And just again, forward is the movement that we continue to push. And I feel very, very grateful to work with people like Anne and the family and team at Lululemon to move 100 Miles of Summer forward every single year.
Oh, thank you. I want to talk a little bit about some of the unique challenges that women and girls face when it comes to access to sport. And this is one that actually feels really personal. When I was growing up in 1980s and 1990s Ireland, it sort of felt like you could be sporty or academic. It didn't feel like there was an overlap. They were mutually exclusive. And, you know, there were very few female athlete role models. And it's funny, I loved tennis, and I'm not sure it was at a conscious level, but I look back, and in those days, Steffi Graf and Martina Navratilova, I mean, there were just these incredible female tennis players who were inspiring me, and maybe other sports not so much. And now we've seen, thank goodness, so many incredible female athletes across such a wide spectrum of sports. And I look at my two incredible nieces, and they're in their teenage years now and just really enjoying access to sport and thriving in it. But can I ask both of you, and I might start with you, Kayla, even going back yourself actually as a professional athlete, before we talk at a macro level, did you find that you faced unique challenges as a woman, as a professional athlete?
Absolutely. I mean, so volleyball during the time I played was only offered at the professional level internationally. There were no leagues, teams, opportunities stateside, which meant playing collegiately, of course, going through that experience. I was lucky enough to attend the University of Tennessee and be a lady volunteer, where our athletic department really valued women's sports as far as resources go and opportunities go. Media coverage wasn't really there. So how do you, encourage, inspire the younger generation and get more opportunities for funding and support if the visibility isn't there? Then you go professionally. Well, the only options for me are to leave home. And that was actually one of the biggest reasons that I ended up retiring from playing. Is during the time I was overseas where I played, my mom's I had to return. My younger sister was graduating from high school. And so she was leaving at home. Someone had to be with my mom. And I was the best option as far as being really able to come back outside of playing professionally, and to see how women's volleyball in particular has expanded and grown stateside in most recent years. Has me so excited for not only the younger players, but so many teammates that I had that were playing overseas that are not able to come home, start families, see their families more, and just live a more integrated life versus having to be away for 8 months and then come home for 2 and continue that schedule.
I'm so sorry to hear, Kayla, that you had to make that choice, which is not a choice you should have had to make. Do you think today that choice is still needing to be made by athletes, or do you think that's improving, or what else needs to change at the professional level?
Yeah, I think it's definitely improving. I think especially when it comes to women, we hold so many responsibilities and hats within our households outside of our careers and our personal ambitions, that support needs to be there. And I think stateside, specifically speaking, having leagues that are here that not only provide opportunity, but also pay well. I think closing that pay gap between men's and women's sports is huge, and the opportunities that women are afforded within sports. Looking at resources differently, knowing that some athletes may have children or may have family responsibilities. What are we providing to them that they can still go to practice, go compete, go train, but also their families are taken care of? So I think it's getting better. I think the more conversation and eyes that are put on the experience of women, not only sharing, the stats, but also sharing their stories, can go a long way in continuing to support women competing in women's sports across the board.
Yeah, and that's women. I mean, it starts with girls. It starts with young girls and access to sport. And I mean, you mentioned stats, and I think there's some pretty stark stats around young girls dropping out of sport. I believe about 45%, is that right? Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think that's about half the amount of boys. So this is about the age of 12 or 13, kind of hitting puberty, that about 45% of girls drop out of sport due to body image. And that's something that will resonate with a lot of female listeners. It certainly resonates with me and with my childhood. I believe that Lululemon are doing a lot to support this, and I believe that you have an initiative called Further. Can you tell me a little bit more about that, please?
Certainly, although I have to say I'm going to toss this one to Kayla too, because I cannot talk about Further when I'm here with one of the Further runners. I was just on the sidelines. It doesn't work that way. So Kayla, I'm going to intro it, and then this is yours. But Further is a really unique and unbelievable initiative from Lululemon that was grounded by a many-day ultra marathon. Kayla, how many? 6 days? Did you run for 6 days?
6 days.
6 days.
From the woman who said that they might never run a marathon to running.
I'll
Listen,
take up on the scientific research, Kayla, but you can share on the experience.
yeah, no problem. I know, Sarah, I have many teammates that message me throughout the feed itself for like, who are you? And I was like, guys, I don't know. It's an identity crisis every loop. I have no idea. So as Anne introduced, so further a women's health and performance initiative, if you will, seeing how far women can go when they're fully supported with resources typically reserved for men. So we're thinking about nutrition, training, all the metabolic testing from DEXA scan, blood draws, all of those things to see, you know, not only how far women can go, what does their threshold look like? There's really interesting research that points to women getting faster and going further as they get older than men in the ultra space. And you think about the body of research that exists within sports science specifically, only about 4 to 6% of that research is women only. And for me, I think that what was most shocking is that women were not required to be part of NIH studies until 1993. So when you look at the body of research that exists that informs women, you know, top down how they should train or recover, sleep, eat, it's pointing them and giving them guidance based off of information that does not include them. It's based off of white male bodies, of which I am not. And I think really since further, it's made me question everything I've ever been told about myself. And within that also empowered me to want to get more resources available. So Further itself was a 6-day feat around a 2.5-mile loop in Palm Springs. And each athlete had their crew there to support them. Lululemon was there to support them. Product design specifically for us being exactly that. How far can we go? And we don't need to think about, is there a hole in my hat for my ponytail? Are my tights the length I need them so I don't have to deal with chafing? Do my sports bras really support me in order for me just to do the thing I'm brought here to do, which is just to push myself? These are things I think women typically don't think about. I know I definitely didn't think about until the design process. I'll never forget our product team, who was incredibly talented, our product innovation team, asking me something as simple as, what length of, half tights do you like? I was like, well, I like the 6-inch, but like I got strong legs in the chafing situation, that 6 inch isn't going to do it. But like a 10-inch is like a little too long for me. And they're like, Kayla, we can make it exactly as you want it. And I think for me, what went off was that how incredible an opportunity is it that I'm able to advocate and say what I actually want and then be heard, and then have a team that's even wanting to ask those questions to provide me with the resources that I need.
Wow. I mean, so powerful. And yeah, I mean, everything you say, we know that very little medical research was based on women in trials. And a book which I highly recommend, if this is something that people want to read into, is Invisible Women, which you may have read, but it really, really delves into this. Tell me what you're doing to support young girls getting into sport and not dropping out of sport.
Yeah. I mean, I'm happy to step into that. I think Kayla, and please join as well. You're doing so much. And I can say just being a spectator at Further was nothing short of transformative. And I cannot even fathom the experience that you had as a runner, as a woman, as a friend to the other women running. It was, being at the center of this incredibly dynamic community was amazing. Forever in awe of that one. And when it comes to getting young girls moving, number one, I think understanding experiences like what Kayla and the other Further athletes had. And there are so many incredible women leading the way. And I share, Sarah, I think you were saying, I have real hope in how women's sport is being embraced right now across the U.S. Number one, across the globe. Number one, that's incredible. And number two, just what the long tail of that is for, getting and supporting young women to stay in sport in much more significant ways. There are a few things more powerful than models. And we have these incredible models, doing extraordinary feats like Kayla has. It's amazing. And then to your question, we're in partnership with many organizations across the globe who are dedicated to getting and supporting young women and young people generally in sport. I mentioned previously our crisis in physical inactivity, and the numbers there are just, they're staggering. It's 30% of adults globally are not moving to our, daily recommended allowance by the WHO. And it's 80% of young people. The numbers are just, it's overwhelming when you think about what we know about how young bodies need to move for physical and mental health. And, these numbers are consistently dropping. So, this really is an imperative, and it is a public health. It is a public health crisis and a public health imperative to get and keep young people moving. So, the organization that is front of mind for me, because Kayla is also really involved in their work, is the Girls Opportunity Alliance, which is an initiative out of the Obama Foundation, and they're not recreating anything. They are a convener for 4,000 grassroots-led organizations focusing in on young women all across the globe, on young women's health and education. And we were so fortunate to be able to bring some of those young women to the experience of Further, which was, again, just truly transformational for them as well. But they're working with the leaders in communities who are really focused in on the distinct needs of young women in their communities. So I think there's no one answer to this crisis to getting and keeping young people, and specifically young girls, moving. But certainly I'm really grateful that at Lululemon we're looking at it again, both from this local level. How do we surround leaders like Kayla with support to connect with, motivate, inspire, and keep young people in their communities moving? And then how are we addressing, these global issues really at scale through networks of leaders like what the Girls Opportunity Alliance has, in partnerships, again, with thought leadership organizations like World Wellbeing Movement, like United for Global Mental Health, where they're named partner on movement now, and the connections between movement and mental health. So it really takes a multitude of levels to make both the systemic and the individual change that's needed here.
Are you seeing a difference? I mean, and I might give this one to you, Kayla, and Anne as well. But if you look today versus maybe 10 years ago, are you seeing those stats are starting to change?
I feel like they are. I think through social media platforms and open conversation, what's possible is becoming more accessible. And I love exactly what you said. A phrase that I often point to is like, you can't be what you can't see. And in order for you to think a space is for you, or you deserve to be there, or it's even an option for you, you have to see examples of that. And I think through conversations like this, the organizations that Lululemon works with, and feats like Further, it creates possibility. And I think for women, that's all we ever need, right? Like we were designed to endure. So when it comes to endurance running, we're like, ugh, please, enduring is what we've done. You know what I mean? But now, like, give me the things I actually need to go further. And I love the name of the feat itself, because I think it creates options for people to tap into, right? So my total mileage was 234 miles, or 377 kilometers. And before that, my longest distance was only marathon. So 26.2 or 42K. And the amount of women that reached out to me said, hey, you encouraged me, you inspired me to just go for a walk today. That's where it starts, is, we're all here to be role models for each other, to be in service for each other. And now let's just create an invitation for women and young girls to dream in ways that is a right and not a privilege. Like, moving your body is a human right. And we just need to create the space and the invitation to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we think about it in those terms as well, right? Everybody has the right to be well. I think to your question, Sarah, about whether things are changing, statistically, I'm not sure yet, right? We will see that. I'm not convinced either way. I'm an optimist. I believe that it can and that it will shift. And the conversation has shifted so dramatically, right? The conversation, there's still such significant, overwhelming stigma with regard to mental health and with regard to physical health. And we are having these conversations. We are having these conversations nationally. We are having these conversations globally. We're acknowledging this crisis. And that's, always the first, and some might say the most important step towards really addressing the needs of those most impacted by these crises.
Yeah, it is. But it's also difficult to be a role model. I mean, Kayla, you cannot be what you cannot see. And again, couldn't agree more with that. And you as a role model is so inspiring. But that comes with the challenges as well. You've got an absolutely vast following on social media. But how do you balance your own well-being with that constant feed of comments into your life coming in? How are you balancing that?
Absolutely. I appreciate this question, because it's challenging for me to ask sometimes, because I think unlike the social media landscape that we're in now, my intention was never to grow a large community. It found me, if I'm being entirely honest. And so having to navigate that every day is like, okay, how can I show up for the people that, found me, to encourage them, to inspire them, but also knowing that that starts with me, that I cannot be for others what I cannot be for myself. And two things I know for me, as far as how I take care of myself and my well-being, being in the position and the platform that I have, is a lot of quiet time, like genuinely sitting quietly in my home, connecting with my sisters who live in the same city I'm in, except for Aisha, who's in San Francisco, my oldest sister. And knowing that, this athlete lens that I have on life that inspires and, informs the way that I train and I recover really applies to the sport of life. So the phrase I use is recover harder than you train, or rest harder than you live. Really knowing that it's those moments in between, it's the slow, it's the quiet, it's the tapping in, but also it's going for annual health checkups. Mm-hmm. It's having people, a supportive social network. It's getting outside and getting sunlight, like really knowing my human health rights and leaning into them. Covering the basics is how I take care of myself to show up every day.
Knowing your human health rights. That's amazing. I want to go to you, Anne, with the same question, but just before I do, when it comes to social media particularly, you said you like your quiet time. Do you consciously switch off all social media or digital channels daily, weekly? How does that work for you?
Absolutely. I definitely step away from social media, maybe more than people in my position do, for two reasons. I think the first being information overload. It's just so much all the time. And I really don't believe that humans were designed to live and experience so many realities in a swipe. There's just so many people that and experiences we're tapping into. So I do get burnt out just being on the platforms. I'm also not on all that platforms actively. And I also think creatively, things I want to say, things I want to build, I want to share with other people. If it's always an intake or an influx of other people's ideas or even what's trending, it definitely starts to blur what's true to me and what the messages I want to share and how I want to share it. So I put guardrails around social media. I check it at first thing in the morning, not like on my phone first thing in the morning, but post first thing in the morning. Respond to comments. I give myself about 30 minutes. And then I check again at 10, 2, and then around like 5 or 6 p.m. Knowing that, if we're going to social media, being on our phones creates this dopamine hit. If we're always touching and engaging with it, that dopamine hit dulls, right? So if I'm going to want to touch and engage with it, like let's give it some space. That way, when I go to social media in particular, I get that hit that I'm looking for, that we all naturally get when we open up our phones. And then I really do my best on weekends to put my phone down in a way, especially on Sundays, until about noon or 1 o'clock. Just a digital detox once a weekend, step away from it. It's a balance between, okay, how are you engaging with it? Also knowing that this is my work. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I love to be in my life and not necessarily having to experience my life through looking through a screen.
Yeah. And it's such a challenge because, as you say, it is your career. So the digital detox is such an important aspect of that. And Kayla shared, I think, some really interesting insights on how you look after your own well-being. What I heard was you recover harder than you train, you rest harder than you train, and you find time for those quiet periods. And what are your daily rituals to look after your own well-being?
Yeah. And Kayla, I love that. I had not considered like a specific time to check in on social media every day. I have my limits. And it's what have you. I don't use it as much as I probably should, given what I do as well. But that's really helpful. I appreciate that. But Sarah, to your question, how I look after my own well-being, it's so simple for me. I've got to get outside in the morning. I have kids and my little one is 10 and he goes to school about a mile from our home. And I love nothing more than our daily walk to school. And I feel so fortunate that we're able to have that. He's going to change schools in another year. I do not know what I will do. But it's really that time to be outside and to move, ideally with my little one and with my fur baby as well, with my dog. It totally changes the shape of my day. And I think it is as simple as just getting outside and breathing air that's outside and moving my body. It doesn't need to be the couple of miles that I love doing every day, but it's just getting outside every day. And for me, it's, and then I would also say it's, I'm quite an extrovert according to all charts of extroversion. And I do need my quiet time. Yeah. So for me, when things feel off, I recognize I haven't had my time with a book. I love to read, or I haven't had time to connect meaningfully, with a friend, and sometimes even with a stranger, just to make eye contact and smile with someone on the street, right? Those things really lift me up. Yeah. So just making more time and space for those moments.
Yeah, brilliant advice. And the evenings are getting longer now. And I have to say, anyway, you can get outside in the morning. I feel very lucky and privileged that we have a little patch of grass in our back garden, which is not something we've always had. And my husband and I on Monday and Tuesday last week were outside gardening and weeding at 7 a.m. And I never knew that I would enjoy weeding. And I love it because it's exactly that. It's embracing outdoors first thing in the morning. So I
also getting your hands dirty, Sarah. So, just getting in the dirt, it's so good.
Who knew I love gardening? This is a new. I'm not saying I'm very good at it, but that's not really what matters. But no, it's incredible. But I want to finish with 2 rapid fire questions for both of you. So I want you to imagine if you had a time travel device. You got a little DeLorean, you can travel back in time and give some advice to a younger version of yourself, maybe at 18 or 21. What might that advice be?
I would just say be flexible in how you think about yourself and the world.
Expand on that. Be flexible. In what sense?
Yeah. Well, Kayla, I was thinking, or no, Sarah, forgive me. It was you. You were saying when you were a young girl, it was either, you were an athlete or you were into academics. What I would say in my life, it was you were an art kid or you were an athlete, and I was an art kid. And I wish I could have been both. And then, it's with regard to flexibility. This is counsel I give to folks on my team and anybody I connect with in the corporate space, frankly, but specifically in the space of social impact. You got to be flexible. You got to move with what we're learning about the crises that we're addressing. You need to be flexible in a corporate environment, right? And I think the people making the most impact in what I do are those that are really, that are really able to be flexible and maintain purpose.
Incredible advice. Yeah, thank you. Incredible advice. I have to ask, are you still an art kid? Have you got any artworks?
Yes, I contain multitudes, Sarah.
Do you? Is there anything behind?
No, I would say I'm an art enjoyer. I love seeing theater. I make it a point to go to a museum at least once a month. I wish I could do it once a week. But I just love being surrounded by creativity so much in all forms.
Wow, me too. Thank you so much. Kayla, if you could go back and give advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Oh gosh, this is a hard question to answer. And I really loved everything you shared around being flexible. I think mine would be, you don't have to figure it all out, and it's all figure outable. Knowing that you can flow with life as it comes and just trust where your feet are planted as you step forward.
Yeah. And I think that's great advice at any age. I think we all probably fall into that trap of thinking we have to have everything figured out, and we really don't. Right. Final question. Please get back in your time machine, and I'd like you to go 10, 15 years in the future. And I'd like you to tell me what change you'd like to see in the world when you step out of that time machine.
I want people to know their neighbors. Like in their apartment building, in their homes, back to when communities really were villages. And perhaps that's me living in a city. But I want people to have more interaction with the people around them and less just passing by them, head down on their phone, which I'm very guilty of as well.
I genuinely, authentically want to plus one that. And I'll just nuance it the tiniest bit, because that to know neighbors, to make eye contact and embrace strangers, and just to honor kindness.
100%.
It's as simple as that.
What a brilliant way to finish. Know our neighbours, build that community, be kind to one another. This has been such an inspiring conversation. I'm going away from this feeling uplifted and inspired, and I'm sure our listeners and viewers will be. So thank you so much, Anne and Kayla. You've both been wonderful.
Thank you so much, Kayla. It's always a pleasure. Sarah, this was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Always great, Anne.